Welcome back to Killer Fun, where we explore the intersection of crime and entertainment every other week. I'm Christy.
And I'm Jackie.
And we're so glad that you're back with us today. Today, we are talking about Pieces of Her. Oh, man. You only think you know your mom until she proves herself a badass in a diner.
I mean, whoa. like old school Blossom Joey, whoa. Whoa. I mean, I literally said
about
whoa,
that, whoa,
and paused it.
Uh-huh.
Rewind. What the heck just happened? It was great.
Yeah.
And you know what? It was great.
It was so great.
I practiced. Did you practice? Did you see if it would work?
No.
I was like, okay, but the knife went in her hand a certain way, and she grabbed it, and sure thing.
Uh-huh.
Right? Like, I was trying to think, how did she... Yeah, she would have had to do it this way. And that's what she did.
Uh-huh. Yep. She did it the back of her hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's super cool.
Yeah, because she just grabbed the...
Oh, did she even grab it?
Yeah, she kind of went like this to pull it.
Oh, okay.
Like, that's why I was like, whoa, what happened there?
I mean, it's a graphic scene, but it's amazing.
I know, like, kudos to whoever choreographed that and figured that out. That was like, wow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. So let's talk about the cast. I'm only going to talk about two people. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about Toni Collette, who was Laura Oliver. Long career, consistently amazing. Got her big break with 1994's Muriel's Wedding as the title character. I loved her in the United States of Tara and Unbelievable. And there's a fictionalized adaptation of The Staircase coming to HBO in May that I think we might have to talk about at some point in the relatively near future.
Agreed.
So, yeah, I'm really excited about that.
It's going to be great. Mm-hmm. And she's great.
Yes.
And she's great in this.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's consistently good. Mm-hmm. Yes. And then Bella Heathcote is Andy Oliver. Also in Dark Shadows, Pride and Prejudice, and Zombies.
No. Okay, I never watched it.
No, me
never
either.
Read it.
No, me either. But I always thought it was a really fun way to combine the two genres.
Yeah. When I first saw that in the bookstore, I was like, what?
Uh-huh.
But then they had such sustaining power that I literally started to go, okay, well, now I'm interested. But I haven't gotten to the place where I'm actually ready to do anything about it.
Oh, that's fine.
That's okay.
And then she was also in Man in the High Castle, which I loved the first season of and then couldn't get into the second season. Anyway, so I'm going to recap Pieces of Her.
Yes.
So Andy is a bored 911 dispatcher working in a small, safe Georgia town where not much happens. She lives with her mom, Laura, despite the fact that we meet her on her 30th birthday. Laura is concerned that Andy moved home to help Laura through a breast cancer diagnosis. And now Laura doesn't want Andy to be stuck. Andy does kind of seem a bit adrift. I think that's fair. But Laura comes across as really controlling. And so over lunch at a casual diner celebrating Andy's birthday, an altercation breaks out. Not between our main characters, but it's Laura who finishes what someone else just started. The knife in the hand, the whole thing. Yeah. She's hailed a hero on social media and on the news, and Laura is very uncomfortable with the notoriety and panics. So Laura insists that Andy move out right away, that very night, in fact. And this seems like an overreaction until an intruder breaks in just hours later. And there's so much more to Laura than Andy can possibly imagine.
Very good.
Yeah.
It was a heck of a first episode.
Oh, the first episode is like nonstop and interesting, not confusing, which I thought was it was mysterious without being confusing.
Yes,
which is a nice line to walk.
It was,
yeah,
and it was comfortable. I think anybody could enjoy the thriller and the mystery part of it without feeling like they had to be like, "Did I miss something?"
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's based on a book.
Of course it is. They
Yep.
all are.
So Karen Slaughter wrote a book of the same name, A Saturday Afternoon Trip to the Mall. They weren't at a mall. They were at a diner.
Nice cafe.
Yeah. And 24 hours later, Laura's in the hospital shot by an intruder. She didn't get shot in the show. But so there are a few little differences, but the book was really well received.
Very good.
Vogue says, rarely in fiction have the past and present collided with such force in a distinctive and compelling voice, because she plays with the timelines a little bit. Propulsive, high-stakes thriller rife with intrigue and suspense, according to USA Today. So that's great.
That's great.
Books well received.
So what about the show?
Not so well received.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Critics 50%, audience 35% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, I think this is one that suffers because it all dropped at once and it's a binge show that's based on a book that's got a lot of twists and turns, and it gets wild towards the end. And some of the things that happen, you're like, that's ridiculous, but it's still really fun.
Yeah.
So I think people are frustrated with the ridiculousness of it, which is funny because all the time I'm reading people they like the first and last episodes of shows and find out they're dragging it too much in the middle. I'm like, there's plenty happening.
That's interesting.
There's no happy medium.
Well, I mean, I know you can't please everyone, but on the other hand, I was wondering if it suffered from that we don't like the ending situation. Oh. And now we've just reviewed it all kind of like, oh, well. And that kind of is what you say. I mean, in a way, you're saying that you get to the end and it's just a little too hard to suspend their disbelief. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, okay.
Yeah. I guess, I don't know if I'm easier to please or...
Yeah, I don't know.
I feel like I disagree with a lot of audience reviews much of the time. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm just easier to. I'm like, I don't know. It was fun. That's really all I'm interested in. I want the show to be fun and entertaining and captivating and give me something to think about.
Right. Yeah. I guess maybe I don't like big plot holes. I don't like obvious.
Yeah, I don't want one you can drive a truck through.
Right.
But you know, I can let some of them go because, let's face it, we all have plot holes in our own life. Right. There's things we don't know. Some things that we don't ever know what happened.
That's true. And sometimes we miss things and we have to go back and realize, oh, that wasn't a plot hole. They really did show it. I just missed it. Like the Home Alone thing.
Yes.
With the passport.
Yes.
How many years did I miss the fact that the passport was thrown in the trash can? That's why they didn't have it.
Right.
I thought it was a plot hole. It's not.
No, it was right there. And, but lots of people missed it.
Lots of people miss these things.
All right. So let's see. The acting was terrific. The Sydney Morning Herald, Brad Newsome, Colette, and Heathcote are both terrific in roles that contrast in some ways but echo each other in others. Ben Travers of IndieWire found it a little too sanitized. Pieces of Her take a similar premise, stretch it out across 8 hours, largely avoids the wrenching character drama of a child learning her mother is an entirely different person, and makes it all nice. Very nice. Too nice. I don't think it's too nice, but that's fine.
No.
I don't have to agree. Brian Lowry of CNN thinks it's good overall, but still somehow disappointing. A relatively modest, in this case, 8-episode commitment. Pieces of Her proves reasonably compelling on that level and those terms. But as series go, it still feels as if it adds up to less than the sum of its parts.
Okay, I feel that.
Yeah.
Because I have one knock.
Okay.
One knock that I feel like is going to affect its staying power is that the stoicism that Bella has, or maybe the internally self-centric lens that she views everything from, which may be what they're talking about. Like, if she's going to be self-centric in her lens, then we want to see her wrestle with the existential crisis at hand, maybe.
Right.
My issue was not at all with that. I felt like she was dealing with fine just in the middle of a crisis. And
right.
I felt fine, but there was no jokes.
No, yeah.
And I was kind of
fine.
like,
It could have used a little levity.
A little levity. At no point does she turn around and go, what kind of old Toyota is this? Like,
yeah.
She pulls up the thing and walks in and pulls this sheet off this old Toyota Corolla wagon, and there's no moment of like, what?
There's no like, I hope this SOB starts.
Right?
You know, like
there's no moment of
or when was the last time anybody started you? Talk to the car.
Talk to the car.
Know?
You've got to, people talk to themselves. And there was none of it. She's going through the suitcase and there wasn't a
like, holy moly.
Yeah, like no mumbling words, if you know what I mean, like at all. I would have had comments going through the driver's license. I would have been like, some sort of exclamation.
Or like a comical reaction on her face. Something. That's fair.
Anything. Any kind of reaction. Fair. It doesn't need to be vulgar or anything. It just needs to be some sort of moment where she turns around and goes, what is happening here to my life? Because I think there was enough time there for that to be the case. Because you don't drive from like down south of Savannah to up, in the north side of Georgia without having some sort of comment.
Right.
And she just like had none.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a missed opportunity.
It is a missed opportunity. I think it affects the longevity of the show.
That's fair. The twists are pretty fair to the source material. I've read and enjoyed a couple of Slaughter's books. If you have, you'll know there's, muchness about it. When in their pylon of twists and revelations, this piece is a good representative of that. Steve Murray of Arts Atlanta.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm like, muchness.
Muchness. I feel like I'm muchness.
Yes.
I'm a little muchness.
Oh, but you're not like much in a bad way. Like you're much in the most delightful way. Because some people whom I genuinely enjoy spending time with are much.
Yeah.
And that, they're much in the way that you're like, nope,
too much.
I can't see you this week because you're much.
You're much.
And I never feel that way about you, despite your muchness. Your muchness is very
because we
endearing.
See each other much.
We do see each other much.
I appreciate that.
And it's never over much.
Well, I appreciate that too.
Yeah. I hope that you feel the same way about me, and I think that you do.
Yeah, obviously.
And I know that your husband feels that way about my husband because we mentioned that we went somewhere nearish your house for lunch one day, and your husband told my husband, "Why didn't you call us? We'd have gone to lunch with you." Yeah. And he was like, "We were going to see you in like 6 hours. I thought maybe I should like lay it off a little bit." And he was like, "Nope. No,
bring it on, bring on."
So if we're much, we're complimentary much.
Yes, I think so. We take up good space.
That's right.
And you know what? I think we make good spaces.
That's right. That's right.
I do.
Yeah.
I believe that.
Oh, it's Stephanie Morgan of Common Sense Media thought it kind of started good, which I agree. The first episode's fantastic.
Yeah, it is.
And then she found it like failed a little after that, which I'm like, not entirely, but a little fair. Despite a gripping and finely acted opening act, this series fails to deliver on the type of artful suspense and nuance it hints at early on. So, and then
it goes on.
Random people have opinions.
Yeah.
You can read it on.
My only other random opinion was I can't see John Locke being shot like that. And if you're not a Lost fan, you don't understand what I just said. I was like, John Locke, you get up. You walk now. You go get him. Anyways, I digress.
Yeah. Brian Tallarico of Roger Ebert. Netflix Pieces of Her is a thriller that only works for someone who has never seen a thriller before. It traffics in so many tropes that it probably worked better on the page of Karen Slaughter's hit book, but they just lay limp in this inert attempt at genre entertainment. it's fair to say maybe the twists and turns are more acceptable in a different medium.
Well, that is why we have different platforms.
Well, exactly.
You know.
And maybe what his real concern is that there should have been a bit of editing. Instead of trying to include all of the twists and turns that are in the book,
let some go.
Let some go. Maybe make it a little shorter. Get the gist of the story. But, you do that. And then you got people who are like, well, the book was so much better because they left out this and this and this. Well, I mean, there's just no winning. Again, there's just no winning.
No, that is hard. I mean, okay, this is a random, but I think about the play, Shakespeare's play, Much Ado About Nothing.
Okay.
It's also muchness.
Yeah.
And there's not much going on, except there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
And if you've not seen the play, you need to find a good playhouse to see it in.
There you go.
Because the acting on stage and the timing and the direction and all the stuff have to hit, or else it's not.
It's
the
not
comedy.
funny.
Yeah,
Right.
it's not funny. And you can get it when you're reading the script, right?
Right.
But I can kind of see how they're playing this almost like Much Ado About Nothing, except a thriller version.
Okay.
And so
fair.
you do have to hit those points in order for it to keep your attention and keep.
That's fair. But they're not funny about it.
But they're not funny about it. And like, hello, that Camry, how could you not have a reaction?
I mean, I don't know.
At this Camry.
My son drives a Camry, and I'm just consistently amazed at how long they've been on the road.
Oh, forever.
And, forever. And I mean, like, you can have a comment about it.
But a wagon at that? I mean, a
Yes.
hatchback. Where did they find it? Is it real, or did they actually just put a Corolla thing on the back of an old
I have no idea.
wagon?
I didn't even think to look that up.
I don't know why I'm so obsessed with this car. But I was really obsessed with the car.
Okay. Okay. Well, while you obsess about the car, we're going to go take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Is It True? Psychology Break and Real Life.
So here's how it works. Christy wrecks her search history. Hey, an essay. We promise it's nothing more nefarious than a podcast. To find out what's true, some of the psychological motivations behind the characters' actions, and real-life applications that relate to our topic. I have no idea what Christy decided to look up. Could be the same thing that captured my curiosity, or something I never thought of.
All right. So, is it true? Jackie, you grew up in Georgia.
I did.
Does this look like Georgia to you?
Okay, it does in some ways look like southeast, like coastal Georgia.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
there's elements of it that they kind of nailed.
Okay.
About the way that like Sea Island looks, which is
Okay.
kind of what it seems like to be based on. Is
Okay.
Sea Island.
Okay.
Off of St. Simon's, like way south.
Okay.
So you know, there's not pine trees there.
Right.
There's not. I mean, it's coastal.
Right.
So it kind of does.
Okay.
But there were moments where I was like,
That's not Georgia.
maybe not.
Okay. Do you know why it doesn't look like Georgia?
Maybe because it's not.
Maybe because it's really, really, really far from Georgia.
How is it in Australia?
Yes.
I wondered because the Australian actress.
Yes. Well, both of the ladies, Toni Collette and Bella Heathcote, are both Australian actresses.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I think I see how you could pull off that looking like Georgia.
Right.
But they had some great like establishing shots that are definitely Georgia.
Okay.
Like where it was like, oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
like I think I drove to that town. Like some little stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah.
But
Yeah. And that may have been like stock photography that they bought
this is
from
what I'm
somewhere
saying.
because the principal filming was entirely done
Yeah.
in Australia. So, which I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, they didn't have anybody like slipping out of their accent. They did a good job.
they did a really good job. They did.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was a pretty place. So.
Yeah. It was.
It does look like.
It was
I
very
can see they
pretty.
kind of based it off. I don't know. In the book, do we know what it was? Where it was based? Is
a Belle Isle. I read part of an interview with Karen Slaughter, and she said that she does not use real places in her books anymore. I guess she did at some point in the past, and she would get letters from people who said, "You can't turn that way on that street." She was like, "Just not going to set them in real places
she doesn't have
anymore."
any rooted like ideas.
Yeah, just in Georgia.
Just general South
Yeah,
Islands.
like just south of Savannah. that area.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It was filmed in Homebush, Sydney, and Amina Beach. Yeah. And other things that have been filmed in Australia recently, which I didn't really realize, but makes total sense. 9 Perfect Strangers on Amazon. It was gorgeous. So it makes totally makes sense that it was filmed there. Marvel's Thor, Love and Thunder.
Okay.
Which I've not seen.
It's that.
And of course, Belle Isle is completely fictional.
Right.
Yeah. Andy had regular 911 callers.
Yeah.
Yeah, this happens.
This is a thing.
This is a thing. Arizona State University had an article about it on their website. It said there's not as much research as you might think about the misuse and abuse of 911, but when you have misuse and abuse, they tend to fall into 2 categories, unintentional and intentional. So unintentional is a pocket dial, which is a big problem. You've done it.
I mean, multiple times.
Oh, really?
Well, the way that Apple has it set up on the watch is just so easy.
Oh, yeah.
For me, if I'm like carrying, it's usually when I'm carrying cables.
Oh.
And I have like several stacked on my arm, and I need to make sure I use the other arm because it'll mash it down.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oops. Yeah. They're generally pretty understanding, but it's an issue.
Yeah.
But I've only done it once, and it was because my friend's phone number had 911 in the middle of it, and I missed a number.
Oh, no.
And so it called 911. I was a teenager.
Yeah.
From a landline, and I hung up because I panicked.
Oh, no.
Which you're not supposed to do.
They call you right back.
And they called me back, and I was like, I was just trying to call my friend, and this is their phone number. And they were like, oh, yeah, that's fine.
They're usually very understanding with me
yeah.
as well. I mean, it has happened a couple of times.
Yeah.
But I think since the evolution of the Apple Watch to include this, I think they're like, I'm like, oh, my watch. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're done. We
know.
Yeah. So, but what Andy got was a deliberate but inappropriate call to 911.
Trash pandas.
We'll get there.
I love the trash pandas.
We'll get
she
there.
actually called them trash pandas.
She
and
did.
I was so delighted.
Yeah, I knew you would be. I'm like, that's the only levity in the whole show.
It is.
Come on.
It is the only levity.
But they're called lonely complainant calls.
Oh.
And they'll call several times and repeat emergencies, and they're exaggerated. Trash pandas, they're usually reporting a intruder in their yard. The intruder hasn't made it into their house, but it's in their yard, which I guess technically the trash panda was an intruder in her yard.
I mean,
but but they're typically elderly people or mentally ill people who live alone.
Yeah.
And they just want a little company, but unfortunately that's not the right way to go about getting it. In fact, calling 911 can get you into some very hot water if it's not an emergency. Very Well Health has an article, calling 911 for any purpose other than to report a true emergency could result in criminal penalties. Each state has different punishments for 911 misuse, but the worst cases of abuse can lead to jail time and fines.
wow.
So,
So, like, have there been any? Did they note any, like, particular types?
let's see. In Virginia, for example, the state's penal code calls 911 abuse a class 1 misdemeanor, which is punishable by up to a year in jail and a $2,500 fine. So, yeah, I mean, Andy didn't seem particularly bothered. She didn't seem like she gets a lot of calls, maybe, so she's kind of okay with it. And maybe that's fine.
And maybe if you're in a small town like that where you're like on a first name basis.
Right. Right. If you call accidentally, just tell them.
Yeah.
And then if you're in doubt as to whether you should call 911, just go ahead and call. If you're unclear if it's a true emergency,
just do it.
Just go ahead and call because really your prosecution is really only from clear violations.
Okay.
The definite people who've, called repeatedly or they're reporting the raccoons or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Or, well, in Andy's case, not interesting.
Right.
Not interesting at all.
Very uninteresting. So the Department of Veteran Affairs, not the Savannah Veteran Affairs Center. That is a fictional place. But it's based on the Department of Veteran Affairs, does indeed have speech pathologists to help veterans. The speech language pathologist provides strategies to improve ability to function at home, work, or school, which is exactly what we see her doing. She's helping people navigate the world after having life-altering injuries or sort of things like that. And in fact, the VA has over 450 speech pathologists across the country. So that's
important. The scene really highlighted the importance of it, actually.
Yes. Yeah, I thought it was really well done. And
like, I felt like, oh, wow, that really is a thing. That's a really, it's not like you don't know that.
Right.
I mean, if you were to think about it.
Well, but you don't really think about like speech therapy and people regaining their ability to speak.
But aphasia and dysphagia, that kind of issue.
Yeah, where you're like having trouble just going and talking to somebody in a store and saying, here are the things that I need.
This is what Bruce Willis is retiring from because he can't connect brain to the words. So it's that language center and those things. I mean, we think a lot, like you said, the capability physically, but what happens when your ability to find the words is the problem. Yeah. And you have to work at that. And somebody has to be able to know that you know in your head what you want to say and know that you're not I don't know, challenged in a different way.
Right. And, you know, I mean, maybe part of that is working with hey, I have a traumatic brain injury and I'm going to need a little more time to get my point across. So like please be patient with me. Right.
That says, be patient.
Right.
You know, I've seen those before. Yeah. That can be helpful.
Yeah. So the first suggestion that we have that Laura is a little controlling is that she turns a spoon to the handle down position in the dishwasher. After Andy had already loaded it in there. And so controlling aside, what's the correct way to put your spoons in the dishwasher?
Depends on the dishwasher.
That is fair.
Waha! No,
it is.
What did they say?
Well, this is GE Appliances.
Okay, so tell me.
They say place forks and knives with the handles up always to protect your hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to mix and evenly distribute the flatware so that it doesn't get nested together. Don't put all your spoons in one because they'll nest together.
They'll nest, and I like to do that.
So gross. Ugh.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it that it's easier to unload it, but
you have to make sure that they're all.
Yeah.
Okay, so I used to be a handle up kind of person because I like to know that when I'm grabbing the clean, I'm grabbing the handle side.
Right. Yes, because I don't want to touch the part where you're going to put your mouth on until it's time to put your mouth on.
There you go.
Yeah.
Except that I realize that so many dishwashers don't clean it well if it's like that. If you flip it the other way, it'll be more clean. So now it's like, just wash your hands before you
put
unload.
the dishes away. Right. Yeah. So they say spoon handles down if there's a really large load so that they're getting washed evenly, but otherwise put the spoon, the part you put in your mouth, down.
Yeah.
So if it's a large load, put them spoons up. If it's a smaller load,
down.
Handles up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to know that I was right before.
That's right.
But we did switch. We have one problem. We like to switch it sometimes because, well, it's when it's a large load. I always tend to flip them up just in case. So I feel good right now.
Oh, good.
Except that I have this flatware that's made in Korea, and it's like the end is like a chopstick.
Yeah. And you can't really put those in.
It handles down because it falls right through. So
and blocks the.
So I'm forced to do it the other way.
Yeah.
Silly problems.
Yep. If you want to know what your dishwasher loading style says about you, I'll post on social media
a quiz for this.
As SearsHomeservices.com has a quiz.
Oh, that's funny.
And I took it and I'm like, you've got a nice balance, just like a perfectly loaded dishwasher. I'm like, that's right.
Well done.
Particular, but not overly so.
There you go.
There you go. The diner shooter saw Andy in what looked like a police officer uniform.
Right.
And he attempts suicide by cop. And unfortunately, this is not only real, but long standing. Like, they've started studying this like in the late 80s.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of research about suicide by cop.
Yes. And actually, a lot of the research that usually gets referred to even now is from the late 90s, from data from the late 80s to the time at which the research was conducted. So
probably needs some refresh.
Well, and I found a journal article, Suicide by Cop, A New Perspective on an Old Phenomenon, that was published in 2019 and delivered at the Society for Police and Criminal Psychology in September of 2017 in San Diego, California. They do have a pretty prototypical person who's going to engage in this. They're typically male, typically mid-30s, a disrupted relationship, mental health concerns. So they do have kind of an MO. Yeah. And they don't have to say, shoot at me, kill me. They just they'll behave in a threatening manner.
To force the cop to respond.
To respond, yes. And very often they don't have weapons, but they'll indicate that they do in some way. Or if they don't have a gun, they'll have a knife instead. That tends to be more common. It's obvious that not all officer-involved shootings are suicide by cop, that they estimate that there's about 10% have some sort of quality of that, some sort of intention. They almost all have suicidal intentions prior to their altercation with the police. And very often they don't really intend to do suicide by cop. They'll go with the intention of harming somebody else or behaving in a way that might get them injured. But they found that a lot of but mostly men it was sort of incidental that the police were there. They went within either an intention or when they saw the police, they thought, oh, here's my chance.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, they didn't necessarily know that a police officer was going to be there.
Right.
You know, or they decided, oh, yeah, now's the time to do it. Since there's a police officer, they hadn't really intended to do it then. A lot of upheaval, mental illness, all of these things are pretty common. The whole article is really interesting and very long.
They tend to be.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. But it was nice to see, well, because the first few articles that I found were, I'm like, this is from 1998.
Yeah.
Don't we have anything newer? It was kind of hard to find something newer. So Laura, after the altercation in the diner, she's got a knife in her hand. And you'd think that maybe the 911 operator would have been able to provide her a little bit better care. Because no, I'm not saying she needed to do anything, but she's sitting up and her hand was below her heart.
Yeah. Like Andy had no idea what to do.
I was like, don't you tell people what to do for a living? Like, lay them down, elevate the hand. Like, let's like
talk you through some things.
Yeah.
But do they even get that kind of training? Really?
Yeah.
I mean, wow.
I think they do.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean,
they talk people through CPR and, you know.
That's true.
Like, can we do a little better?
Yeah.
No, I mean, just put a chair next to her and set her hand on it that it's anything.
Anything more than just letting it bleed out.
Yes.
At least she didn't pull out the knife.
Right. She knew not to do that. No, don't ever do that. You get stabbed with something, don't pull it out. But when the paramedics do finally get there, Andy tells them that Laura has a declining LOC. Like a what? level of consciousness. Yes. And she was altered in her level of consciousness, which is common in shock.
Well, and she was bleeding out too.
Yeah.
And then she started speaking truth. See, and Andy didn't know it was truth, so she thought she was all lost her mind.
Yeah. Yep, that's why she was declining LOC. But it really was still declining because in her normal state, Laura wouldn't have said those truthful things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So these fictional journalists sure did have a good time splashing Laura's name, her behavior, her place of employment, all over. And according to journalists.org, maybe that wouldn't have been the most ethical way to handle the situation. I was like, are you kidding?
Everywhere. All of her information.
Everywhere. They said in this article, most ethical codes will include a reference to showing consideration for people either not used to dealing with the media or those dealing with grief or shock, which they did not do any of it.
Nothing. Not to mention just personal privacy for safety.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, comes into play later, and we understand why she wants her privacy and values it so highly.
Yeah.
But even aside from that, public and private people are something that journalists are supposed to consider. So similar questions arise in the situation of private people who are suddenly thrust into the public eye because of news events that involve them. As you decide how much attention their personal lives merit, consider questions such as how willingly they embrace or exploit the attention, how relevant their private lives are to the public issue and thrust them into the spotlight, and how open they are about the matter in social media. So maybe don't give her full name, her photograph, and her place of employment.
Yeah, right.
Talk about the speech pathologist who did this, but don't say her name and her place of employment.
It was just all together right away.
Yeah.
Yeah. It did seem a little
and
what?
I get that she'd been filmed.
Yeah.
That was part of it, I think.
That it went viral first and people put the name to it. So it was already out there. But they could have been.
Yeah. The news didn't have to perpetuate that sort of ethical violation.
Right. It was when they tipped over to her place of work.
Right.
And so without getting her permission, without getting that from her. That was where I was kind of like, oh, come on.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, Belle Isle was dubbed the safest city in Georgia. So that's not true because
Belle does not exist.
It doesn't exist. But what is the safest city in Georgia?
What is it? Is it by city or is it by county?
City.
Okay.
From what I found on safewise.com.
Okay.
Johns Creek.
Oh, really?
Yeah, is considered
a great place.
Yeah, north of Atlanta, east of Alpharetta. It's not a coastal city. In fact, none of the 20 cities on this list were coastal cities.
Wow,
not one.
Well,
so
there's a reason for that too.
Yeah,
but Johns Creek is beautiful. I have a friend who lives there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
And she bought a house when you could afford it.
Yeah. Oh, nice. That's good. Well, she's very lucky because her violent crime rate is just 4 victims out of 10,000 people in the population.
Wow.
And the property crime rate is just 4.5 out of every 1,000 people. So very low.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Very nice. All of the sources that we use to inform our discussion here on Killer Fun Podcast can be found on our social media. Join us on Facebook at Killer Fun Podcast, exploring the intersection of crime and entertainment. You can find us on Twitter at Killer Fun Pod, or you can send us an email at killerfunpodcast@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to share a link to whatever information you're looking for. We love to hear from you. You might learn a little something too. Psychology break. So, Andy doodles.
She draws. She's a freaking artist.
Yes,
but she doodles like high-end doodle.
Yes, like the kind of doodles that like most of us are incapable of doing.
Yes.
Yeah, her seat at her dispatch is just covered. She even doodles the ketchup bottle when they're in the diner. That behavior can actually mean different things. The Independent had an article. Doodles may reveal our subconscious thoughts, says graphologist. So I don't know.
Graphologist.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know what kind of training graphologists get, but she had kind of interesting insight.
Okay.
So it was Tracy Tussle, doodle expert and consultant graphologist. I don't know what kind of training she's had, but
Doodle expert?
doodle expert.
It's a thing?
I guess so.
It's like baby stylist. That's a thing?
It's like, I'm interested in this thing. I'm just going to give myself a title and a job.
I mean,
that's fine. So she says doodles are created casually, usually when the doodler is concentrating on something else, by the complete free flow of uninhibited symbols direct from the subconscious. This means that they are outward expressions of our unconscious thoughts and not intended for any particular recipient or any specific use. Like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Research found 2/3 of people doodle when they're bored. That could be fair. Living in the safest town in Georgia, maybe she was a little bored at work.
maybe.
1/5 do it when they're anxious or stressed. Also,
She was anxious.
anxious and stressed when she was not bored. Yes. And then about 25% of people do it when they're relaxed.
Well, and she is also obviously an artist.
Yeah.
So I think for her, there's got to be a factor of she's also like, that's her dream.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of really her.
She was in New York, obviously doing the artist thing.
Right.
And then came home.
Right.
And now.
It's kind of adrift.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Small majority of people don't want to let people see their scribbles.
Okay.
They don't want to share those with anybody. And then this graphologist goes on to talk about what some of the things mean.
Oh, please, because are you a doodler?
Sometimes.
Okay.
I mean, it depends. I find the less stressed out I am, the less likely I am to doodle. So I'm a stress doodler.
Okay. Did you do it in high school? Like all over your notebooks and stuff?
No, not so much in high school because I wasn't stressed. It wasn't until I was working when I always on the phone.
Okay.
When I was on the phone with people, if I wasn't writing notes about what we were talking about, I was scribbling on something.
So I think I'm a relaxer.
Okay.
Like, I did it all through high school and it kind of and I just got, but like I had a specific kind of thing I tended to do.
Oh,
right.
Well, I want to hear what that is.
Yeah.
I hear what that is, but let's see.
Let's
talk
see. Maybe
about some
she'll
of these
say
things.
it. Maybe she'll say
Yeah.
it.
So circles and round shapes indicate that you're friendly and kind.
Okay.
Squares are for people who like organization and to be in control. Triangles are drawn by ambitious people.
Okay.
About 20% of people doodle recognizable objects. Very often most people, it's just like a random shape. It's not like anything in particular. But of the ones who doodle recognizable objects, flowers are the most popular.
Yes.
Yeah.
Flowers.
They tend to suggest someone is loyal and faithful.
Oh,
That's you.
I'm a golden retriever.
That's right. The next most popular object is stars.
Oh,
which are pointed shapes, ambitious people.
I did a lot of stars.
Oh, okay.
Took me a long time to figure out how to do a star.
Oh. Yeah. And then faces are third.
Okay.
It's someone who's a people person, unless they're drawing themselves, and then they're a little self-centered.
Okay. Yeah, so I used to draw a lot of flowers, also vines.
Oh,
I do vines.
Yeah.
And then I remember as a young girl thinking that I might like I wanted to be better at drawing.
Oh, okay.
Like I wanted that. Like I enjoyed that. Not so much coloring, but like I liked drawing. And so I used to draw a lot and have like different things that I wasn't good at all. It was just definitely a childhood kind of like thing. But I did a lot of faces. I learned how to do different the kind of eyes, and I took a little art class, and then graciously I found other talents because
drawing wasn't so much
was
for
not
you.
one of them. It was terrible, but I really enjoyed it as a little girl.
Cool.
But yeah, flowers were my main flowers and vines. Main doodle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? There's nothing wrong with not being good at something, but enjoying it. And I think people forget that.
I do.
Yeah.
I forget that.
It's fine to not be very good at something, but still enjoying it. Like when we play, what's that game? Pop the guest.
Oh, song pop party.
Song pop party. That's
Song
what it
pop
is.
party.
You're always like, I'm not good at it, but I enjoy it.
I do. That is one thing I really enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I'm really terrible at it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. We do tend to professionalize our hobbies too much.
Right. That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Back to sketching.
Yeah. Back to sketching. Good. Good. So in the diner, just before she's shot, Shelley is enjoying congratulations on her impending attendance to medical school by Laura. Mm-hmm. And Andy seems to feel personally attacked by Laura's recognition of Shelley's accomplishments.
Yeah, because I see Laura did throw a little side eye.
Yeah,
in the scene.
And that's fair. She knows her mom better than we do. Not as well as she thinks.
Not as well as she thinks. But Laura did throw a little like, like a little side eye.
Yeah.
But she did. She definitely took it personally.
Yes. Well, Talkspace.com has an article about this. Why other people's accomplishments sometimes make you feel terrible.
Oh, yes. Let's talk about this. Okay, this is real stuff.
It's totally normal, and it's absolutely an emotional reaction. Mm-hmm. It is human nature for us to compare ourselves to others. And sometimes that makes you feel jealous.
Yeah.
It just happens. But it can be an indicator of low self-esteem. With practice, you can try and not compare yourself to others. It does take some practice. And, it's harder when you have a parent who's maybe comparing you a little bit as well.
Well, because in that situation, in that scene, they had just finished talking about the fact that she was adrift, that she didn't know what she was going to be doing with her life. And then it was like all this congratulations for somebody who's going at it and whatever. And so it was like that, oh gosh, it just highlights, it highlights your failure in some way in that scene.
Right.
It shouldn't all the time though.
Right.
Like you shouldn't just randomly hear about like somebody and be like immediately like, oh.
Yeah.
No. But like, yeah, I could see in that moment where it would be like, oh. And she did the right thing. She just said, I need a minute.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to walk away now.
Right.
And that was smart.
Yes, it was. Dr. Rachel O'Neill says, instead of focusing on stopping the emotion, focus instead on identifying what you're feeling and giving yourself some space to simply feel it. Mm-hmm. It's okay to experience feelings of jealousy or inadequacy in the face of others' success. Take some time to evaluate what it is that you want to achieve with your life and focus on what you're grateful for.
Yes.
Find
out why it highlights something for you.
That's right. Why does that make you feel bad about yourself?
Right.
And we're not all meant to be doctors. And I think that's maybe, it's interesting because I think Andy was bringing some of that to her relationship with Laura. Like, oh, I'm not good enough because I'm not a doctor. And that wasn't what Laura was trying to say at all. But she wasn't very good at communicating. I just want you to be happy and fulfilled. Right.
I mean, Andy could have felt just as insecure regardless of where she was going to school.
Right.
The sheer fact that Shelley had a plan could have been, a little much.
Yeah.
For her and what she was going through. And, to be fair, Andy did drop what she was doing to come home and take care of her mom. And so there does seem to be, even though there is a gratitude that Laura says.
Yes.
It does seem to be missing from her compassion of how it was an interruption that's hard to get back on track with.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's this, like, she feels like she derailed Andy's life.
Right.
But you kind of learn from Andy as she's texting with her friend that, oh, why should I move back to New York and fail at 3 jobs there when I can fail here for free?
Yeah, that there's an overall sense of
that she wasn't really thriving, and so and maybe she's never told her mom that because Laura didn't seem to understand. She felt like she'd pulled her away from her future, and Andy didn't really seem to feel like she had a future in New York anyway. Mm-hmm. So I think that's maybe a communication issue.
Yeah.
And
right. And some of those things we get to know as the viewer.
Right. Exactly.
And we can see it. And that's the beauty of the writing and how they acted it out. It was brilliant.
Right. It was done really well.
It was really.
Yeah.
I mean, they were communicating, but there was so much going on around what they were saying. Mm-hmm. That's hard.
So let's talk about that controlling personality a little bit. So good therapy talks about control issues. Exerting influence over one's environment or the actions or behaviors of another person is sometimes used excessively by those who fear the unpredictable and ambiguous and fear losing control. Incessant need for control may become overwhelming and exhausting, wreaking havoc on relationships, careers, and overall quality of life. Yeah.
Okay, that's hard. Control issues are hard because...
They are hard because it seems like you're coming at it from a good place. Like a kind and helpful place. I just want what's best for everybody.
Right. That's true. It does. It comes from kind of an innocent place, and it can be... It's difficult for other people to allow control to be given in good ways. And so it's not just also the person who is doing it, but then it's often not received so
right,
super great.
Right.
So, like, for instance, people who are not controllers internalize the frustration.
Right.
Instead of...
Yes, instead of being controlling other people, they internalize it and find it as their own, a failing within themselves.
When they allow others to control them.
Oh.
And they don't find their voice.
Okay.
Because, okay, like if you've got a type A, type B kind of thing, just for the sake of ease in saying this, not that everybody falls in one category or the other, but like type B tends to not care one way or the other. But it's not, that doesn't mean they want to be barked at either.
Right.
Right? So then they don't find their voice. And so their control issue is that they never feel like they have any. Even though they don't really need to control everybody else, they feel like their control has been taken away.
Okay.
Their autonomy. Okay. By other people who aren't just exerting their control over what they have control over, but are kind of leveraging it on people that are not under their charge.
Okay.
And this is where I think the problem gets.
Right.
You know?
Well, and it's particularly difficult in a parent-child relationship because parents do have a measure of control for a large part of a child's life. And then releasing that control can be difficult.
Difficult.
As somebody who's facing this, I get it.
When do you not?
Well, and I'm realizing now, like, oh, that's going to be different for both my kids. Because one needs less control already. One's going to need it longer. And really wants me to have it. And
that's dangerous too.
Yeah.
Because that type B personality, there might be internalized for anybody like them, you know, might have that internalized, like, I didn't realize I was letting go of my voice when I said whatever you want.
Right. Well, and I'm hoping that kid grows out of it.
Control issues.
Yeah.
The way to fix that, in my opinion and my education and whatever, is don't aim for control, aim for influence.
Oh, there you go. That's
because
helpful.
If you can influence somebody, it's because you have the rapport and the relationship in which your voice matters to them.
That's right.
And in the situation we saw with Andy and Laura actually didn't have influence. And that's why she was grabbing control.
Right.
When we don't have influence, we grab for control.
Ooh.
So we need to focus on influence. And that includes type B personalities who are trying to find their voice. They need to remember to influence themselves.
Okay.
That it's okay to have preferences. That you're not hurting somebody else just by saying, yes, I do have a preference about that.
Right.
That's not control.
Right.
So, influence.
Yeah. They did talk a little bit in this article about what might cause control issues. Ooh. And we'll see this later with Laura. Traumatic or abusive experiences. Well, there you go. Lack of trust, anxiety. These are all things that Laura is dealing with. Perfectionism. She's dealing with that. Even though she's very compassionate with her charges at work.
Yeah.
She is striving for perfection to get them to a point where they can be adequate in public with people they're unfamiliar with. And an example of exerting control over others, overprotective and helicopter parenting.
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
True.
real life. So I told you we were going to come back to trash pandas.
Okay, yes, good. Yes, I'm excited about the
I was
trash
like,
pandas.
why do they call them trash pandas?
I've always called them, well, not always. It's been a while, but I picked that up somewhere along the way.
You picked it up somewhere along the way, and let me tell you where it originated.
Oh, please.
This article, I will post it online. It's about mascots. So I'll post the link. I didn't write it down. I was dumb. But
No, you're not.
It's there. It'll be there. You'll be able to find it. It's delightful. So in January of 2014, some dude on Reddit commented on a photo of a smiling raccoon wearing a suit. And all he commented was raccoons equal trash pandas.
I think I saw that. I think that's where I saw it.
That was the first instance.
Yes, because I remember that. Now, maybe it wasn't the first time, but I distinctly remember a post in which it says raccoons equals trash pandas.
As far as anybody can tell, that is the first time that was appeared on the internet.
Hey!
It was in 2014.
How in the world did I find that?
I don't know, because when you do Google search, stuff from Reddit shows up. And then by just a year and a half later, there was a whole Reddit thread for trash pandas, a community with 245,000 members. People want to talk about trash pandas, even though raccoons and pandas are not related to one another.
Face.
Right.
It's
they're black and
I'm
white.
doing like I'm making this thing on video. You can see it, but you can't see it, listeners. But I'm literally like using my
your little
panda
binoculars.
eyes. Yeah, the binoculars, little panda eyes. Raccoon eyes.
Yeah, they're wearing little,
masks.
Bandits. They're
Little
bandits.
bandits.
They're little bandits.
The last undomesticated animal. It's coming, people.
Yep. One of these days. So a couple, Ralph and Lisa Nelson, bought the Mobile Bay Bears, who was a filter league for the Angels.
Okay.
Yeah. And then they moved them to Madison, Alabama, after they bought them because they wanted more baseball. This was in 2017 that they bought it and then moved it. And they decided they wanted to rename the team.
Okay.
So they had no restrictions and asked the local community to submit subjections and put some of them up for a vote. And they received 900 unique submissions. They included thunder sharks, moon possums, space chimps, comet jockeys, but trash pandas got 45% of the vote.
Wow.
And now they're the trash pandas, and their mascot is called Sprocket. And it's because the U.S. Space and Rocket Center is in Huntsville, and they wanted a space themed.
Okay.
Yeah. That's why moon possums was one. Yeah. Anyway.
They're so cute.
They are cute. They're really adorable and really like.
And they play peekaboo when they're little.
Yeah. You've played peekaboo.
I've played peekaboo with raccoons. And that was a weird moment because I was like, you can't be here, but I love you.
So despite the fact that there are suicide by cops, we know that that's a real thing. The Washington Post had an article in 2019 talking about the ways that police are trying to deal with these incidences. They're trying to use less lethal force. They're trying to implement new protocols to help limit this kind of situation. So now the police have some issues that they maybe need to deal with, especially in some parts of the country where the police force doesn't represent the racial makeup of the area. That's an issue, but it was encouraging for me to read this and realize, oh, well, they're not just ignoring this.
No.
Not everywhere.
And San Antonio is a highlight city.
Right.
Like you have to talk about it because I've seen all of their training because I'm their tech person. They train at our church.
Right.
Then so I've seen all of their materials and then with my background, I kind of, peek,
paid
right?
attention.
Anyway,
right.
I paid attention. So I've seen all of it and their presentations, like what they're doing to help cops identify that it's coming. So they can take proactive measures, deal with, you know, all of those things. It's really good. It's called crisis intervention training is what they all have to go. And in San Antonio, it's one of the, I guess, a few cities, but growing cities, but one of the first to require it of all officers.
Yeah.
So, and then we actually have a dedicated mental health unit. So
that's great.
It's pretty cool training, and hopefully it helps, you know.
Right.
Unfortunately, that kind of data takes a long time to see.
Yes.
What's helping and what's not. So we just have to.
And we're in a very instant society where
we want it fast.
Yeah.
And so all we can do is take evidence and research and kind of glean from it what we think may be the right intervention.
Right.
You know?
So Andy didn't have a failure to launch situation from home. She had a returned home to care for an ill parent.
Yeah.
So that's a little different, but empoweringparents.com has an article about how to encourage your adult child to move out.
Okay.
So, spoiler alert, telling them to leave on their birthday after a traumatic event isn't the best way to get your kid to move out.
No.
And this article recognizes that there are some situations where adult children live at home, and that's a beneficial situation for everybody. This is for when the situation, I quote, the situation that's become uncomfortable or intolerable.
Okay. All right.
They suggest to, step one is to know where you are, that you want them to move out, that this is the situation. Admit it. Change your view. I thought this was an interesting step too. Thinking of them as incapable is actually a disservice to them and keeps you in parental caretaking mode. So recognize that they're adults who actually can take care of themselves. You don't need to enable them.
Gotcha.
Step 3 is identifying and guard your emotional buttons. This is a good one. One parent told us, I'm okay with my adult child not having extras, phones, video games, internet, haircuts, but I can't let him live on the street. I know myself and I'll never stick to it. So they're like, okay, that makes step 4 possible to make your boundaries clear.
Gotcha.
State what you will and will not pay for. If you need to, start small and work your way up. And it's your child's responsibility to locate resources for the things they want. And you should create a contract with your adult children to say, here are the terms of living in my house. And then step 5 is quit giving the money. A huge part of making your adult child uncomfortable is to stop paying for all the extras, things they view as necessities that really aren't, because then they will have some sort of motivation to go and provide themselves those things. Yeah. And then enough is enough. If they're verbally or physically abusing you, you don't have to do any of these steps, basically. Be done.
Be done.
Be done. So I always like to end on something a little funny. So wild and funny stories are something that 911 dispatchers often have.
Oh, let's hear them.
BuzzFeed compiled one for us. This is very fun. There's a man who got stuck in an Under Armour shirt. It was very tight and his shoulder popped out of the socket. And he said, I would have driven myself to the ER, but I'd have had to stick my arm out the window.
I should not. Was it too small?
It was probably too small. He's Under Armour, probably worked out.
Well, I'm about to say ugly things. Well, I just feel like men don't have this much experience squeezing themselves into things.
Yeah.
Right. In general. And so I feel like a lack of experience play a role in getting it. Because I'm like, well, any chick who's put on a bra after a shower.
Yes, we all know. If you put on a sports bra after a shower, you understand exactly how that felt happened. And what sausages feel like.
Yep, yes. Exactly.
Speaking of raccoons, A grown man called 911 because a monster was trying to get in his son's room. And it turns out that they'd only just moved to America the month before and he'd never seen a raccoon before.
Bless his heart.
So, yeah, I explained what a trash panda was and welcomed him to our wild jungle.
I guess if you saw their little hands, that would be very scary.
Yes.
Because there's nothing. I have to remind myself they're wild animals because they're so cute.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, these are not. They might be nice, but they're still wild animals.
Right.
Those little hands.
Ooh, that bite you. Yes.
Those little hands.
Yeah. So a frazzled mother called 911 because her 6-year-old had gotten on the roof and refused to come down.
Whoa.
This is not the funny part. She said they needed to hurry, not because she was worried about him falling off the roof, but because he'd done this before and peed down the air vents. I'm not worried about him falling and breaking his arm. That'd serve him right. I just don't want to have the smell of urine in my house everywhere again.
Oh my gosh. These are delicious.
Oh, and then there's the woman who called 911 3 times in 10 minutes because she was mad about a service animal in the mall.
No.
He's here staring at me. No, I don't care that he's helping. He just licked his nuts. She was so offended by this dog looking at her and licking himself. Yeah.
Wow. That's precious.
And the last one. I took a call with a guy who insisted that he was in an argument with a man dressed as a giant Pepsi bottle. He said the man in the Pepsi suit had stolen his debit card and refused to give it back. Upon arrival, the officers told me he was high and arguing with a vending machine.
It's great. This man in a Pepsi uniform. An outfit.
He's wearing a Pepsi costume. That's a vending machine, dear. So next time, we're going to watch The Dropout on Hulu, just the first episode. Wild story of Theranos and the so close and yet so far. So many people deceived, so many people disappointed by the idea that you actually cannot test for 200 disorders with a single drop of blood. It's not a thing that can happen. But we're going to talk about it.
Man, I can't wait to watch this.
Yep. So until next time, be safe, be kind, and wash your hands.
Da, da, da.